Hi guys, let's tune in. Today we will be talking about energy from the standpoint of thermodynamics. Thermodynamics is the study of energy and how it moves, aka how it's transferred, how it changes form, aka transformation, and what limits energy. And remember, we're going through these definitions to better understand our own energy. How do we transfer our energy? How are we able to change its form? And what limits our energy to begin with? So let's go through this definition of energies. Thermodynamics' definition of energy. So we have a conserved property of systems that is transferred as heat or work. What exactly? So let's break it down. Conserved property. We're going to start with the word conserved to begin with. When I first thought about this word conserved, I almost thought of it as storing, right? Which we are able to store our energy. But in terms of this definition, we are using the total amount of energy able to be maintained. So how do we maintain this energy? It's about making sure that the same amount of energy that we put out is the same amount of energy we're getting, aka reciprocation. But that's up to you to determine what is actually worth giving your energy to by noticing what are you receiving fruits of your labor for lack of a better term. So our stored energy, right? What was that? Potential energy from our last lesson. We can be expelling that energy very quickly if it is an immediate situation or our routine is out of whack, right? And once we can harness those factors to make sure that they're working for us, that we're helping to maintain this energy, we can start gradually putting our energy towards our long-term goals, right? So very quickly again, I'll probably be preaching this for a while, but I'm realizing how much routine helps in maintaining this energy to begin with. So what are important factors of our routine? Things like nutrition, sleep, fitness, nervous system regulation, stress levels, recovery, and environment. If we are able to help our bodies, the energy doesn't need to be immediately given to help us maintain homeostasis, to help us maintain a balance, and therefore we can start gradually putting it towards what we actually desire in our lives. And this whole concept of conserved comes from the law of conservation. So if you're into spirituality at all, you'll hear many people say this, that energy does not get destroyed or created, that it only can be transformed, right? That's essentially what we're talking about here. If we all have the same amount of energy, one person is going to use half of their energy to maintain their bodies if it's out of whack, if their routine is all over the place, versus those who have a solid routine in place. Now maybe only about a quarter is going towards their body and their nervous system regulation, and now they have more energy to expel towards what they want, right? This is not rocket science. Again, it's just the fact that we're not taking care of our bodies. We're not either educated in it, not in an environment that actually helps us to do these things, and now we're here. We're learning about it, which is great. And this is going to take time to actually change, because it's like, hey, keep a routine. And it's like, thank you so much. But that oftentimes means maybe changing your environment or holding firm boundaries. And that's where this routine starts to get complicated. But the law of conservation, capacity does not disappear. It just changes form or location. So, what are you doing with your energy? Again, see what you want to put your energy towards versus look at your life and see what is taking up too much of your energy and cut it. You need to cut it, okay? So I'll mention the autonomic nervous system really quickly because it helps us with two different things. Number one, there are parts of our energy that must go towards maintaining our body. The autonomic nervous system, onomatopoeia, okay, autonomic nervous system regulates involuntary bodily functions to maintain internal balance, right? Some of our energy is naturally going to go towards our bodies, making sure you're breathing, that your temperature is regulated. That's natural. But the more you have your routine in place, the less energy needs to go towards that because you're helping your body here. And that's energy that you can now store or conserve for your own desires. Now, let's move on to property, conserved property. Now, a property I kind of think of very similarly as what was that called? The measurable quantity from before, essentially a label minus the numeric value that we had to have before. So it's a characteristic that describes the system. And remember, the system is just whatever you're studying, aka us. So what are characteristics that describe you? And I often, I'm making this lesson up for the first time, but I think of the characteristics, right? Think about somebody being disciplined and well-balanced and at a state of peace. That's really going to tell you what their energy is going towards. The characteristics of you are going to oftentimes lead us to understanding what your energy is being placed towards. Anywho, let's continue on to conserved property put together, right? A quantity remains constant in an isolated system. It cannot be created or destroyed. The energy is maintained, right? Only transferred or transformed. Now, I really like this idea because a quantity remains constant in an isolated system. So we humans, right, the system, are not isolated systems. We are open systems, aka energy is constantly entering or leaving us. So I think I'm going to make a video about spiritual awakenings in a few days, but as a somewhat introvert, I consider myself an omnivert, but for a long time I was an introvert, and still to this day I love being alone. And during a spiritual awakening, a lot of times people are quote unquote in isolation. And why is that? Right? Because less of your energy is actually being expelled towards certain things, certain factors in your life when you are isolated. And then you're able to understand your own energy more. What is it going towards? What thoughts? What people? What emotions? Right? It was when I isolated that I was able to see where my energy was going. If you understand your own energy in meditation, how you feel, what thoughts are yours, what emotions are yours, you can now know right away when an energy that is not yours is in your energy. Okay? Go back and listen to that. Understand your own energy, and you can always clock somebody else's. Okay? Clock somebody else's. Okay. Humans are open systems. Constantly, energy is leaving us or entering us. So how does energy enter us? Through food. What are you eating? How much of your time is consumed with you eating? Your oxygen. Living on islands lately, Just the air is different. My quality of air is better, which means my breathing is better, right? And I already told you guys about breathing through the nose versus the mouth, right? So even if we can help our bodies, right, by eating well, by breathing better, and I know everybody can't move, but anyway, how does energy leave us? Through heat, movement, or waste, which is a part of the definition we'll get to in a bit. But again, this storage of energy is one thing, but always making sure that what you're giving out is what you're giving in needs to be reciprocal. So that includes in relationships. Is what you do for another, do you get something back in return? And that can be in a different form of energy, but it needs to be reciprocal. Even in terms of your job, compared to the amount of effort you're getting, how am I being compensated for that, right? And then you can start balancing this shit out. So I want to talk about something very important very quickly, which is allocation of energy, right? Where we allocate our energy is everything. Essentially, what is taking away versus what is giving to us. And I just want to mention the nervous system again, because again, your energy has priorities here. And number one is keeping you alive. Thank God, right? We want to be alive, making sure we're breathing, our heart rate's intact, again, our body temperature. So the more you are regulating your nervous system, the less of your energy is constantly being expelled towards that. Again, some of your energy must go towards that, but how much of it is dependent on your routine. I'm going to read you this. A regulated nervous system allows energy allocation to shift away from emergency maintenance. That doesn't, did that even go together? Emergency maintenance. And towards intentional. So once we handle the nervous system, we can move it towards intentional, adaptive activities such as learning, creativity, movement, and social connection. Which is, some of our goals, if not all of them, are pretty much going to fit into those categories. But you need energy to reach your goals. But we got to work on giving our energy towards this regulation of our habits, of our routine, and then we can start shifting that energy towards something a bit more meaningful. Now, let's get into system. A conserved property of systems, right? The system is whatever you're giving energy to, what has your attention and focus, the holder of energy. We are. So, in science, it's the thing being viewed in relation to its surroundings. If the water is the system we are studying here, it's the surroundings is the bottle, it's my hand holding it, it's the room that it's in. We are now studying ourselves. We're focusing on ourselves, and even more specifically, on our energy. So, I really loved this. A system, is defined by its boundary. How many of us are not good at boundaries? Again, if you're trying to maintain this routine, that all of a sudden means saying no to people. That means speaking up for yourself. And when other people are involved in this process, and because we are not isolated systems, that's more likely than not likely, right? But I just love this idea, a boundary. What leaves and enters the system is all determined by you. What's inside of you? What's going on? What are you allowing to go on? Choosing those thoughts and those emotions. What's outside of you? Stay away. And what crosses in between it? What is reciprocal? What do you exchange or transfer your energy amongst? Let's continue. A conserved property of system that is transferred Transferred, I like to think of as that performance of work. Now, that performance of work is that an outcome has happened, but the transferring of energy happens simultaneously. In order to accomplish your goal, you are still using energy. You are transferring that energy from within you that is stored towards the goal, towards lifting the bottle, right? I'll drink some water. This is orange juice. Okay, so transfer, energy moving from one system to another. And it can either be the energy transfer within yourself, right? Or within your surroundings, between you and another, between you and the environment. So you have to, again, go back and look at what is taking away from your energy. Because, again, as I was on my spiritual journey, still am, but I already knew certain things, places, people, whatever, that were taking away from my energy. But a part of it is that, you don't think it's out of malice, or you want to help people, or you think that you can handle it. Like, I don't know if you see the world, but a lot of people are cracking under pressure. They're breaking. And they're breaking because they were trying to maintain the leakage of their energy for so long that now they have nothing left. They are deprived. They are depleted. And now they have to start working on filling their energy back up. And we want to do our best to regulate our own energy before that moment happens. Because it happened to me. Maybe I'll share my story one day, but I was so drained from giving my energy away. And this is another thing, right? In terms of who is taking your energy, whether they're aware of it or not. Different lesson. Let's go. So, the transferring of your energy from something or from within you. I'm going to choose this thought now. I'm going to choose this emotion. I'm going to choose this routine, right? I'm going to choose what to put my energy on, is happening internally first, right? Before it is transferred. So there is a heat transfer. I felt like I didn't say the word. Anyway, heat transfer, which is happening due to a temperature difference. So we can think of the sun, right? Or lack thereof, a fireplace warming up the body, or the body losing heat due to an environment. So I kind of like to think of this heat transfer almost as a byproduct of your environment, right? What is naturally expelling your energy to begin with? And of course, right, we can think of the weather as one of those things, but we can be so used to something taking our energy and not realizing how much it's impacting us, right? Because again, even with the energy of the weather, as somebody from Chicago, they say that the cold like hurts your bones more or something as you get older. Like it's harder as you age to be in the cold. But there's still older people there, which I'm not saying everybody should move, but if we know these things, and obviously all of us can't live in the same location in the world, but then we really need to make sure that we're maintaining the heat in a different way. Like one of my best tips for the winter, side note, is I would put my clothes in the dryer before I would leave the house, like 5 minutes. Put it on, you toasty than a mug, okay? And then you go outside and like by the time the heat expels from the clothes, your body is already warm. Like you're already adjusted to the temperature outside. Anyway, let's move on. But let me just tell you, thermodynamics, what we're studying right now, is thermo means heat. We just talked about heat transfer. Felt like I should tell you that. And last but not least, we have our work transfer, right? A force that causes movement. And remember, we talked about a force being a push or a pull. That force can come from within you or outside of you. And I would argue that we want to be the force that causes this movement ourselves rather than something outside of us. Because I would also probably argue that if something outside of you is changing you, it is likely because you didn't make the change yourself. And now God, universe, whatever, needs to push you and needs to teach you this lesson because you were not willing to yourself. We can think of this simply as being at a job you don't like. Quit. Look for another job. See your possibilities. But enough time of that place draining your energy, chances are you're gonna be removed. Or more gracefully, maybe somebody else offers you a job, right? These are all those pushes and pulls, that force that causes the movement, that causes the transfer. That's really good with the work, the transferring, right? From one department to another, from one job to another. And we want to be able to be the authors of our life, right? To say when we notice that our energy needs a transfer or needs to be transformed, so that we're not limiting our own energy. We just tied together that first part so beautifully. So again, I just want to clear up that transferring of energy is where your energy is going, from one job to the other job, from this to that. Versus transformation is what form energy changes into, right? We can store our energy. We can expel our energy. We can change the energy from within us, right? These are all forms of energy that doesn't necessarily have to go out. The transformation of the energy, even when you eat something, is changing forms within your body from the energy that it was as a solid to within your body, so that you then can transfer that energy to something else the same way you transferred that apple, that ass. I gotta go. But I hope that this helped. Again, routine is so important, and just recognizing, writing out all of these different factors in your life so that you can start noticing what is taking away from your energy versus giving to you. And we always want that to be fairly balanced, because even if you're constantly taking in energy, there's a limit to that, right? Even in terms of storing energy, we can also think about even fat, body fat. That is a storage of energy. And right, that's a good thing sometimes, but there is a limit to how much the body can actually store and be transferred into energy that is usable. Because even after a certain point of body fat, it's actually causing more energy to carry around that stored energy. I'm leaving. I hope you guys have a good day. I'll see you guys later this week. I know I was a little out of it last week, but we're somewhere new. And I'll talk to you soon. Stay tuned in, and bye.